Washington is a very volatile place right now, with a daily fire hose of changing news and questionable facts. For many correspondents covering it, this White House has been a trying assignment. And one of the many questions in D.C. is how far this president's party is willing to support him. Our next guest has covered every presidential administration since Ronald Reagan, sued Donald Trump multiple times to keep his press pass, and went to jail to protect a confidential source. His latest book is called Free the Press. Brian Karem, Salon's White House correspondent, joins us now. Brian, thanks so much for your time today.
Glad to be here, brother.
You looked at all that happened in D.C. in the first 100 days of the Trump administration. In a nutshell, tell us what happened.
Craziness, unmitigated chaos in a blender is the best way to put it. We saw a lot during the first administration that was questionable, but in the second administration, there seems to be no stopping anything because there's no gatekeepers left. Donald Trump, this time when he came into office, decided to find people who would support him rather than those who would keep him from his worst tendencies. He wanted people that would encourage his worst tendencies, and he got that. And so the cabinet is not pushing back. J.D. Vance, the vice president who once referred to Donald Trump as America's Hitler and said that they would support free speech, has joined Donald Trump in not supporting free speech and pushing it back against those who would exercise it. So there's no wheels left on this man. It's headed down into the ravine and will continue to do so.
As somebody who was on the beat each and every day, did those 100 days feel a lot longer than 100 days?
Oh, man, those first 100 days felt like 100 years. I mean, so much went down so quickly, from everything from the Doge cuts to what we're seeing now is the direct result of those first 100 days. The shootings, the immigration status, the war in Iran, the fight against big tech, the fight against science. My God, they fired all the science advisors. We saw all of this in the first 100 days. The bowing of Congress to Donald Trump's knee, that occurred in the first 100 days of Congress. The dismantling of the free press. Well, that's been ongoing for 40 years, but he certainly went after us with vigor in the first 100 days of the new Donald Trump administration. So everything that we see now is a direct result of what happened then, and it portends even worse going forward, including voter suppression and a variety of other things that are antithetical to the very idea of a democracy. But maybe it's just me.
Well, you've been in D.C. for decades. You've been around the block. Have you ever seen anything remotely like this before?
Well, I love how you're nicely telling me I'm old, but yeah, the first administration I ever covered was Ronald Reagan. And I remember when there were things about him that were detrimental to democracy, but when I met him, he was cordial, he was responsive. In fact, I thought I was getting kicked out of the White House because I had tripped and fall. I was traveling with Sam Donaldson and Helen Thomas. They knocked on the door. They told Larry Speaks to come out. The Secret Service came out and said, "You've got to leave." I turned. I was 24 years old, tripped and fell on my butt. There I was. I felt a big hand on my shoulder. I thought it was the Secret Service throwing me out. It was Ronald Reagan. And when I turned around, he said, "Well, young fella, you don't have to bow in front of me." So if that wouldn't happen today, Donald Trump would just kick you out. So there is quite a bit different now than then.
Well, let's shift to the Republican Party's apparent internal turmoil over Donald Trump. Specifically, what have you heard from some people within that tent?
Well, there are people who are very upset with Donald Trump. I don't think the Speaker of the House is one of them, or at least not publicly. Privately, Republicans are far more brave than they are publicly. And if you could take a vote that was a secret ballot, there are those telling me that today Donald Trump would not only be impeached, but he'd be convicted in the Senate if it could be a secret ballot. But it won't be, and they don't have the courage of their convictions to come out from what they say privately so bravely to what they need to do publicly to get rid of him.
Is the gap widening between Trump's Republican loyalists and those who are turning against him?
Yeah, it's like, watching the parting of the Red Sea. It's it's wide, expansive, and growing. And you can take a look at Marjorie Taylor Greene and her actions. You can take a look at Alex Jones and InfoWars. You can take a look at Joe Rogan. You can take a look at the people firing out against him, because even some of the Republicans are saying he promised no forever wars. We've got one. He promised economic stability. We don't have it. He promised lower gas prices. We don't have it. Promised health care. We don't have it. Rural people are upset with Donald Trump because of a loss of jobs, a loss of access to education, and a loss of access to health care. It's just whether or not they'll be able to do anything about it this fall, because the Supreme Court came out and gutted the Voter Registration Act, which means that there are a lot of people that won't be able to vote, and they're going to gerrymander districts to make sure that the Republicans remain in control, or try to do so.
You gave us a long laundry list of issues that some Republicans may have with this president, but is there one flashpoint? Was there one moment where the bloom came off the rose?
Depends on what segment of the MAGA population you're talking about. Two things happened recently that really separated him from a majority of MAGA members. One was when he basically threatened genocide against the Iranian people in a tweet, well, actually in a social post, and then when he picked a fight with the Pope and compared himself to Jesus and put the meme out that he later said, which he later said made him look like a doctor. He was told to say that the image was doctored, but he decided to say that he was a doctor. But it was him pretending to be Jesus. Those two things have really kind of, in the last month, have really put his MAGA people on edge.
Well, is this MAGA turning away from Donald Trump, or are we witnessing the dismantling or disintegration of the MAGA movement?
I think it could be a bit of both. Both things could be true right now, but it depends on what the Democrats do, because nobody's better at snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory than the Democrats. So it depends on what they do this fall, and it depends on what Donald Trump does and the Republican Party does between now and the midterm elections to gerrymander districts to try and keep Republicans in power. And you could see MAGA splintering and the Republicans drawing away from Donald Trump, but the same people getting elected because they have gerrymandered districts to make it possible.
So what would the Democrats have to do, or rather not do, to turn this into a turning point, to leverage this cleavage in the movement?
Well, the Democrats have to do something they loathe to do, and that is quit listening to the Republicans framing the political argument, create their own political narrative, and tell people why they're better off with the Democrats, and listen to the voters. One of the things that Donald Trump has done successfully is leverage what people want in order to get elected. And Donald Trump doesn't have any desire to do what people want. He just tells them what they want to hear, as any good grifter does. The Democrats are very good at telling us why we need to vote for him, but not listening to what it is that people really want and need. So the Democrats need to find candidates that can work. The same candidate that works in New York will not work in Montana. The same character that works, the candidate that works in West Virginia won't work in Kentucky, although they're closer. The thing is they've got to craft their message and find the proper people to run in the districts. Then they'll be okay. Of course, Donald Trump's making it easier every day, but that's still a low bar that the Democrats have a hard time crawling over.
All right, let's turn to the King's visit. What has been Washington's reaction to that speech in front of Congress?
It was funny that the King of England knew more about the separation of powers than Donald Trump. And so when the King of England came out and got a standing ovation in Congress for what he said about, the balance of power in the United States, what could Donald Trump say to that? Even Republicans stood up and cheered, and Donald Trump tried to make fun of that and said, hey, Democrats never stand up and cheer for me, but they did for he did something I couldn't do. Well, that's because he was cogent, he was right, he understood history, and he knew what our Constitution was about, something that Donald Trump does not.
I can't believe this number, that you've been to more than 30 White House Correspondents' dinners, but you didn't attend this last one. Why not?
Well, I loathe to be in the same room with a man who constantly calls me the enemy of the people, tells me that I'm a disgrace because I asked him a question about the Iranian war that he doesn't want to answer. And I have no desire to stay in a room with that guy for an hour and listen to him berate my colleagues and myself for simply trying to do our job while he tells us he's, why he needs his one big, beautiful ballroom, how the country's never been better, how it's hot, 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 how everyone tells him, sir, you're the best president that's ever been. I don't need that. I need him to sit down and answer some questions. And we saw that he doesn't want to do that when he sat down with Norah O'Donnell with 60 Minutes after the shooting incident and then turned it on her when she asked him a question. I have no desire for that. I will not participate in that type of hypocrisy. Donald Trump, if you want to really prove to us how transparent you are, you could sit down with me and talk to me for a half hour, and we'll see if he'll ever do that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because from this vantage point on this side of the border, he presents as a very accessible president to the press, but you're saying that's not necessarily the case.
Donald Trump has never been accessible to the press unless it's under his conditions. He has taken over the assignments in the Brady briefing room, who can be in which seats. He has taken over the assignments as to who can cover him in the pool. So he'll appear in front of people that are friendly to him. And you can tell that the questions are staged and presented to the reporters when they start out by going, as the mainstream media says, but you are actually that, you're a great president. Can you react? And he'll say, oh, that's a great question. Of course it was. It was planted by the Trump administration. No, Donald Trump isn't accessible to the press. No, Donald Trump is not transparent. No, Donald Trump is anything but transparent.
Well, Brian Karem, I'm sorry I wasn't able to get you to say what you actually thought. Maybe we'll get you next time, but thank you very much.
Well, I have a hard time with that.
Take care.